Good afternoon and welcome to the April 4th edition of the Gold, Goats, and Guns Short News. My name is Tom Luongo. We've got a lot to talk about. Today is yet another twist, turn, cajole, wheedle, force, arm twist day when it comes to Brexit. Nothing's going to change until we get to next week, but it's interesting to see what's happened today. Been a couple of interesting days since we last talked. The last time I did this, Theresa May had just come out and said she was going to sit down and talk with Jeremy Corbyn, which they've done. And which they continue to do. But before we go any further, let's get all the stuff out of the way. We've got, you can follow my work over at tomluongo.me. You can also follow me on Twitter at TFL1728, and you can support my work over at Patreon on Patreon/Gold, Goats, and Guns. Lots to talk about. So let's get to it. So what's going on right now with Brexit? Theresa May caved in the other day. We were all down in the mouth figuring, okay, the fix was in. It was always going to wind up like this. She was always going to portray Brexit at the final moment. She is, after all, a Remainer. She is, after all, a committed globalist. She did hatch this entire plan with Angela Merkel, it looks like now, from the very beginning. Merkel, for her part, she's over in Ireland right now saying, and this is the fun part about it, that Merkel will do everything to stop a no-deal Brexit. And this is exactly what I've been telling you for months, that the EU no more wants the Brits to crash out, quote-unquote, crash out of the European Union without a deal, or even really leave the European Union in any substantive way, any more than my goats want steak for dinner tonight. Okay? It's not happening. So, and Merkel is truly the voice of Brexit. Don't listen to Michel Barnier, don't listen to Juncker, don't listen to Tusk, don't listen to Guy Verhofstadt, don't listen to any of those guys. None of them matter. They all take their marching orders from Merkel. Merkel knows that Brexit is the worst thing that could possibly ever happen to Germany. So here's the big gig. So what's going on? Well, while May and Jeremy Corbyn sit down and have hour after hour discussion talks about how they can come to an agreement that they on how they can betray the British people, which really should be a very short conversation. The fact that they're going on and on for hours on end now, over 2 days, when they don't have 2 days, is really quite simple, is really quite crazy. I mean, what do they think they're going to get out of this? We're going to just sit around, and we know what the options are on the table. You've got Theresa May's deal, which is part of the process, and they're either going to bolt down a customs union, Frankenstein style, and make an even worse hash of the situation, or they're not going to come to an agreement, and that'll be the end of it. So the fact that they haven't come to an agreement yet tells you that neither of them really want to compromise, because neither of them, at the end of the day, wants to be blamed for betraying Brexit. Every time we see the, excuse me, my wife is texting me. Oh, okay. Now, every time we get to one of these decision points, it always comes down to Labour wants to blame the Tories for this process, and the Tories want to blame Labour for this. But the reality is that they're both scared to death of going back to the voters. So, because every day, if you look at the polls, if you look at the polling, every day, no deal becomes more popular option, even if even if the polling is inaccurate, because I don't believe British polling 9 times out of 10 anyway. Certainly not Sky News polls, Snap polls. And when you look at the general gist of what's happening, the closer we get to an actual decision point with Brexit, the polls keep coming up a cropper every time for Remain, every time. And so now what's happening? Well, we've got the Cooper-Letwin bill that was passed by a vote, single vote, yesterday, saying, amending the Article 50 law to make it an open-ended arrangement where the Prime Minister will have to accept whatever the EU puts on her as far as stipulations are concerned, whatever stipulations the EU demands of Theresa May in order to grant an extension, she must agree to, and then that would get written into the bill. That's the way the bill is written. Okay, the bill is written as a blank check to the EU to come up with whatever terms they want. Now, this is at the end of the day, this is the single biggest betrayal of Brexit that has been done so far, without a doubt. This thing is monstrous. So monstrous, even the House of Lords can't get behind it. And currently, or at least as far as I've heard recently, I was watching Nigel Farage about an hour and a half ago, they were filibustering in the House of Lords to try and run the clock out on this thing. What do I mean by that? Well, filibuster after filibuster, the bill hasn't even come up for consideration yet in the House of Lords. The House of Lords keeps filibustering by adding amendment after amendment after amendment after amendment for them to discuss before they even bring the motion to the floor, because they don't actually want to vote on it. By doing that, they're actually trying to run out the clock. And I find that really interesting, because even though the unelected House of Lords has, really no dog in this hunt at the end of the day, this is what's happening in order to try and stop this bill from going through, because they understand that at the end of the day, doing business this way, in this almost patently unlawful way, is hugely damaging to the what's left of the legitimacy of the British political system. And so, filibuster after filibuster, and the filibuster has to hold through the session on Monday. If it finishes up today and then moves into Monday, because then by Tuesday we will be within the 48-hour window that Donald Tusk stipulated in the original extension, saying the UK has to have an agreement, some kind of withdrawal agreement, to bring back to the European Commission before they meet on April 10th. So that would be Tuesday. April 8th is Tuesday. So they have to be able to, so the Cooper-Letwin bill has to go through. Corbyn and May have to come to an agreement, has to go through by the 8th, in order for May to be able to go back to the European Council on the 10th and say, this is what I've got to offer you. We need more of an extension. Please, sir, may we have some more time? So that's what's going on. So the fascinating part of this is that, in reality, the House of Lords could actually save Brexit. Meanwhile, any further damage that the House of Commons was going to do to Brexit today got shortchanged, because there was a leak in the press box behind the Speaker's chair in the roof due to the rain. A fitting image of the state of the House of Commons and Parliament, shutting the whole thing down, and hopefully that they can get back to business on Monday to actually pass all of the things that need to be passed. It's still April 10th. What Tusk put in the agreement, Viking dude, is that there's a 48-hour window before the EU Council meets on the 10th. They have to have a deal basically by the 8th, so that the EU Council can approve it on the 10th, to then allow the Brits the 48 hours they're going to need, or the 24 hours and 36 hours they're going to need, to then write it into law. All that has to be done in 3 days now. And if the House of Lords filibusters this thing out, Theresa May won't be able to go back to the European Council with a deal that's been approved by Parliament. And a legal way to amend Article 50, which, by the way, already hasn't been done. I mean, there's a legal challenge to this extension that is working its way through the British courts as we speak anyway. The whole thing stinks to high heaven. Now, back to Merkel, because Merkel's the important part here. Again, we keep coming back to what I've been talking about for months. And I've been telling you literally since the day I came out of the closet and started doing Periscopes and writing again, that ground zero for the next financial crisis is in Europe. And it's because of this. Brexit is a symptom of a much, much deeper problem. Okay, it's the same problem that they've got in Italy, Austria, the Czech Republic, Hungary, Latvia, Poland, now Bulgaria, even Romania to a greater or lesser extent. France, oh my God, how could I forget France? Spain. All of these countries are chafing under Merkel's rule over the EU. And so I say again, Merkel going to Ireland to profess solidarity with Ireland for optics purposes, to say, we will do whatever is necessary to stop a no-deal Brexit, is all you need to know about how desperate they really are. Don't take me literally when I say came out of the closet. Yeah, I only have eyes for my goats anymore. I kid. Seriously, I kid. All right. Don't want anybody to take that the wrong way. I know that's like good. I get. All right, never mind. So, all right. So so we've got Merkel finally bringing her imprimatur on the thing. We've got the House of Lords filibustering against Cooper Letwin, knowing that this betrayal of Brexit is the most insane thing we've seen in over 100 years in British politics. And at the end of the day, the forces that just want to burn Brexit down are so entrenched that they can't possibly give up at this point. We've got Philip Hammond saying, well, a second referendum wouldn't be such a bad idea because the other options are just beyond the pale. No, they're not beyond the pale. You pale, limey twat. They're not beyond the pale. They're unacceptable to you. Well, you're soon to not have a job. Because at the end of the day, treaties, and this is why this fight is so important, people understand that pipelines and treaties and these kinds of relationships outlive governments. So if you can get the treaty signed and you can get the treaty done and dusted, they're good. They don't care. Because they'll take the political fallout later because it doesn't matter. Their careers, most of these people already know their careers are over and done with. You can't actually even, in many ways, fight them on that. Certainly the ones that have come out of the closet. Cooper, Hammond, and the rest of them. Grieve, the rest of them. It's all done. Right? People are all finished. So, what comes next? And the interesting part about this is I was watching Nigel Farage's show, and Theo Usherwood was talking about this stuff. It was really cool. He said, you got to remember something. Jeremy Corbyn is not in the driver's seat here. He's got a real split within Labour. Both major parties are split. There's a sincere portion of the Labour Party that wants to honor the referendum and just leave. They don't like the idea of a no-deal Brexit. They would prefer anything else. But the only thing that they would prefer less than a no-deal Brexit is having to go back to their constituents and say, I had to vote to betray Brexit, otherwise, I couldn't defy the whip. And at that point, this is the kind of thing that people don't care about anymore. They don't care. They want you to do what we told you to do, effectively, or you guys told them to do. And it's the same thing here in the United States. It's the same thing in France. It's the same thing in Germany. It's everywhere. We're like, we don't care at this point whether you like what we told you to do. Go fucking do it. And shut up and stop whining. And stop talking out of both sides of your mouth because your loyalty to me is like 4th or 5th down on your priority list. Because you think I don't have a choice. Because the truth of the matter is that there's going to come a point where these people are going to get so angry that Parliament's going to get burned down. It's not like the Brits haven't tried to do this before. I mean, these are the kinds of betrayals of people's wishes that violent revolutions are made from. And no one wants any of that. No one wants to see the violence. No one wants to see that kind of frustration, because when people lose everything, they lose it. When they lose all illusions that their government works for them in any fundamental way, when they feel like it doesn't matter what I do at all, they have two options: opt out or get angry. And now, I'm not hearing a whole lot of people saying, that's it, I'm done with politics. I hear some of it. But I'm hearing more and more people say, oh no, this will not stand. So Labor's split over a second referendum. What's splitting the Labor Party apart is that the MPs that are going to try and hold his feet to the fire over a second referendum, which is deeply unpopular in Britain, no matter how much they try to say it otherwise. People do not want a second referendum. They want the original referendum honored in some way. Most of them would be okay with, we made our peace with WTO, we lost the vote, let's just do this and move on. You people continuing to try and stop it is making us even angrier that you just won't give in to reality, that it's okay to just leave. So they're split over a second referendum, because no matter what Corbyn agrees to with May, they're going to want some form of a majority of Labour wants a second referendum. Why? Because they don't want it to be blamed for this. They want the people to tell them what to do, because they don't want to make a decision that they are worried is deeply unpopular. Because at the end of the day, always bet on the fecklessness of politicians. They are a feckless and cowardly lot. And they have to be dragged out into the light of day and eventually, forced to make a decision that they can't hide from. And that's what these votes have all been about recently. Now, on the other side, you've got the Tories, who are split over no deal. You've got 170 Tories who are ready and willing to just say, look, no deal is the way to go. And Theresa May is committed to not doing that. And the sad part about all of this is that everything I just outlined, if the filibuster goes through and May has to go back to the EU without a deal, and then the Cooper-Lettman amendment can't pass, and it will all wind up back on Theresa May's shoulders on the 11th. Because she can, after the EU makes demands of her for another extension, she could just unilaterally accept it, and then Parliament will rubber stamp it. So it's just fascinating how this is playing out. But the key here, and the key here is that the worm is turned on no deal getting stronger amongst the polls, amongst the people, and the polling is getting stronger, and that's eroding the argument against a no deal Brexit. And the way this thing has been laid out, they are trying desperately to not just have this thing kind of time out and then they wind up out on WTO terms. And the truth of the matter is that the financial markets already understand all this, okay, in the short run. But they don't want to believe, and so there'll be some catastrophic stuff in the quote unquote in the short term as everybody starts to try and push markets one way or the other. We saw this right after the Brexit vote. It'll happen here. It'll happen here if it happens. Simply put, there will be money put on the table to punish the British people, and that will be the end of it. But at the same time, the pound has to fall, the euro has to fall. All of that has to happen. All right, I'm going to go through and try and read some of your comments, and then we'll call this an afternoon. It's been about 20 minutes. Okay. So Semedja says, I love the Cooper bill. Voted in, I think he's being sarcastic, voted in by one vote majority. The vote of an MP wearing ankle tag. She was found guilty of perjury in court to escape a speeding fine. Won it. It's a total farce. I agree with you. When are the Brits going to take up torches and spoons and surround Parliament? Says says Viking dude. Yeah, because they don't have any guns, and they're going to now outlaw knives. So yeah, you're going to have to go with a pointed stick. What about a pointed stick? No. What happens when a man attacks you with a banana? What about a pointed stick? You shut up. Yes. I mean, British politics really has gotten down to the point where it truly is a Monty Python skit. And they'll start toilet papering Parliament's homes. Yeah, I know. All right, Patrick Vidian says, yes, Tom, we can bide our time. You're right, you can. The political class are just making it worse for themselves in the long run. Absolutely they are. It will be easier to bring them down eventually. It will be. It's going to happen here. I think I saw some polling out of, was it Manchester? Or it was a working class city. I can't remember which one it was. Said in a local paper, said that the new Brexit party is already outpolling the Tories 28 to 27. All right? So, gotta like that. Cookie says, the British ruling class and the establishment have always despised the proletariat. You're right about that, because the British ruling classes are ultimately the Politburo of British Marxism. Okay, use the word proletariat properly. At least their pretense is now fully exposed and nakedly on show. You're absolutely right. And that's the same thing here. We've been struggling with this thing for 3 years, with nearly 3 years with Trump now. Is that the very least, we've always said that no matter what happens, we're going to find out who the enemies truly are. Because in order to stop this, because the public outcry, because the public has reached this point, and when you start, and all you have to do to people who have been in power, unchecked power for so long, that the minute they start to feel that it slips at all, they know that their power is indefensible. They know that their actions are indefensible, and they know that their power is very much ephemeral. And so the longer they're in power, the more paranoid they get, even though they keep pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing. At the same time, they also become more arrogant that, well we can just put whatever we want out on the evening news, and then the minute that, and then we'll get them to do whatever we want. You know, that's a whole, we live in a reality-based world, and we create reality. I think it was Dick Cheney who said this, or one of his aides. We create reality, and the rest of you just run around and try and figure out what it is that we've done, until we're debunking their shit in real time. When the hang time between the talking point hitting the marketplace and the debunking of it, and the oh bollocks moment showing up amongst the people, shortens to nearly nothing, which is where we are today, lies become exponentially harder and more expensive to maintain. And that's exactly what's going on with Brexit. They're spending billions and billions and billions of dollars to try and stop this, because at stake are trillions of dollars. And that's why. Magashi Mofo. Okay, that's an interesting name. I have tried to watch the Parliament hearings. I just don't understand any of it or what they say. I got to get my stick back on the ice soon. Break from work for Luongo Scope. Thank you. Appreciate it. Get back to work. I have watched hours and hours and hours of British Parliament. I will be honest with you. I have watched more British Parliament in the last 3 weeks than I've watched Congress in my entire lifetime. Because at least these people know how to insult each other. Other than Mike Lee standing up there and talking about, you know, the Green New Deal and about how we need Tauntauns and Sharknado. That thing was just comedy freaking gold. I don't know how I don't know how he did that without like laughing. If you guys haven't seen it, look up Mike Lee and the Green New Deal. Oh God, 8 minutes of pure comedy gold. Trevor Noah could never, ever, in his wildest aspirations, be this funny. Patrick Vidian, even Hammond wants to rig a second referendum now. He's always wanted to rig a second referendum. He's always played coy in the background, but Hammond has always been the arch remainer in the cabinet. He has been the ringleader of these people from the beginning, and he needs to be fired. But Theresa May won't do that because Theresa May works for Brussels. So, all right. So where are we? 25 minutes. Well, this sounds like unless you guys have got some more questions or comments or whatever, I'm going to wrap this up. This is where we are today. Next thing I do, which probably will be tomorrow afternoon, I'm going to want to talk about Snufflegate and Joe Biden, because, you know, nothing says gold, goats, and guns material like Pedo Joe. So I don't know. I did see the bill going through RE Trump relative to Trump pulling out of Yemen. I did see that. I fully expect nothing to come of it, because the big rollout, I mean, in terms of geopolitics, we'll talk about this tomorrow evening on the live stream at 8:30 tomorrow night, is that it came out today that the rumor is that Trump and Kushner are going to unveil their grand plan for the Middle East, Israel and Palestine, on the 71st anniversary of Israel's founding, so on their Memorial Day, effectively, or their Independence Day, and which should be fitting. And of course, I would assume that's assuming that Benjamin Netanyahu wins re-election, but we'll see. Yeah, we definitely want to talk about Pedo Joe. He's not Creepy Joe, he's Pedo Joe. Whether it's true or not, I don't care. Pedo Joe. Please. Hashtag Pedo Joe. Say it ain't so, Pedo Joe. I know those 8-year-olds look like hoes, but they really ain't. Man, come on. I mean, we can do this shit all day. All right. Trump tweeted a good Biden video today. Well, you know, Trump is at least entertaining if not useless. So Kushner needs a good firing? Yeah, of course he does. Kushner needed not be in the cabinet de facto at all from the beginning. Two-thirds of Parliament should be recalled and deselected this week. Do you see it happening? All right, this has been the Gold, Goats, and Guns short news for Thursday, April 4th, 2019. If you like what you heard today, like and subscribe. Do it. You know you want to. You know you'll love it. You know you can't get enough. Well, whatever. Please. And like, retweet, share, the whole 9 yards. This really needs to start going far and wide. And we'll talk soon. Keep your stick on the ice.